समन्ता चक्रवालेषु अत्रा गच्छन्तु देवता सद्धम्मं मुनिराजस्य शृण्वन्तु सग्गमोक्खदं धम्मश्रवणकालो अयं बदन्ता धम्मश्रवणकालो अयं बदन्ता धम्मश्रवणकालो अयं बदन्ता नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्दस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्दस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्दस्स Reverences, Reverend Samaneras, Upasikas, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. This evening I shall speak a little bit about the factors of enlightenment, the 7 factors of enlightenment or Sattabhujanga. They are called the 7 factors of enlightenment because upon enlightenment these factors comes to full maturity. As one proceeds in the path of purification, purifying one's mind, these factors, we arouse these factors, we practice by means of practicing and causing these factors to grow, to develop in us. What are these 7 factors of enlightenment? The first factor is that of sati, mindfulness. Mindfulness refers to the foundations, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. 4 foundations of mindfulness being mindfulness on the body, mindfulness on feelings, mindfulness on the mind or the state of mind, and mindfulness on Dhamma, development that takes place in us. Now, we have discussed this morning about mindfulness on the body, the different aspects of mindfulness on the body. We talked about the 6 different aspects of how we can develop our mindfulness on the body. Firstly, we talk about breathing in and breathing out. Mindfulness on breathing in and breathing out. This is what you all have been doing since we began this retreat. So this is what you are developing, this factor of enlightenment, mindfulness on the body. And you are mindful of your bodily postures, the 4 bodily postures, sitting, standing, moving, whether walking, and lying down, reclining posture. After that, there is another aspect of being mindful of clearly comprehending your bodily activities. Now this covers all the bodily activities that you can think of. When you stretch your hand, when you look forward, looking backward, looking sideways, you are mindful. You are aware of your body actions. Now this is how you dwell mindfulness, clearly comprehending the body. With a clear comprehension of body, you will realize that there is no being, there is no person doing. There is no self as such. It is just the action of mind and body. Then the mindfulness on elements of the body. As you develop your mindfulness on the body, you become more aware of the composition of your body. We talk about the basic elements, the four basic elements. The elements of earth, Patavi, Apo, water element, Tejo, fire or heat element, and Vayu, wind element. These elements you can realize, you can experience these elements in the form of, in the earth element there is solidity, hardness and softness. The liquid element or water element in fluidity, the stickiness, cohesive properties. Heat element in the form of temperature, hot and cold, belongs to the heat element, properties of heat element. And the wind element, that which brings about motion, movements. So these basic elements, when we talk about body, we can analyze these bodies into basic elements, four basic elements. Then we also talk about the 32 parts of the body, the 20 solid parts and 12 liquid parts, what you have been advised to contemplate daily. Now, then there is another aspect of mindfulness on the body that with regards to the decomposition of the body or the ninth cemetery contemplation. These 6 aspects of mindfulness on the body, there are these 6 aspects which comprises mindfulness on the body, how you can develop your mindfulness on the body. Of course, when you are developing mindfulness on the body, you concentrate on one aspect. As you develop this one aspect, all the other aspects will begin to grow on. Little by little, you become aware. You become more aware of these different aspects of mindfulness of the body. When you develop your mindfulness on the body, you naturally, as your mindfulness on the body develops, you naturally become more aware of your sensation or feelings. This is the second mindfulness, foundation of mindfulness, mindfulness on feelings or Vedana. And we talked about mindfulness, we talked about feelings in the form of pleasant feelings, unpleasant, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant feelings. We can categorize all the different kinds of feelings that you can experience into these 3: pleasant, unpleasant, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Then, upon developing mindfulness on feelings, you become more sensitive, more receptive to thoughts, ideas, concepts in your mind, as well as the state of your mind. That is what we call Chittanupasana, mindfulness on the mind. And then we go on to the next factor or the next foundation of mindfulness, being that of Dhammanupasana, mindfulness on Dhamma. And we have talked about the 5 aspects of Dhamma. The first being mindfulness, how we develop the 5 mental hindrances, how we understand we are mindful of the presence or absence of mental hindrances in our mind. These 5 mental hindrances being 1, kama desire, vyapada, aversion, tina midda, sloth and torpor of the mind, uddacca kukucha, restlessness, and vichikicha, doubts in the mind. So, in the process of developing one's mindfulness, when one comes to observe the development that is taking place in oneself, one analyzes how far, whether these mental hindrances have been cleared, whether we have been able to control, put these mental hindrances, check them, and or at least temporarily overcome them. So, upon developing, upon controlling, at least temporarily suppressing these mental hindrances, then that is how we develop our concentrated states of mind. The jhana factors arises, and that is how we are able to develop the higher concentration or concentrated states of mind, Patama jhana, Dutiya, Tatiya, Chatutta jhana, the first, second, third, and the fourth absorption. Then, the next aspect of Dhamma we consider in the development of mindfulness on our development, we observe the 5 aggregates. These are Pancha Khanda, the aggregate of form or Rupa Khanda, the aggregate of feeling process, Vedana Khanda, the aggregate of perception or perception process, Sanya Khanda, the aggregate of Sankhara Khanda or mental formations, of volitionary activities, and Vijnana Khanda, the aggregate of consciousness. Now, these 5 aggregates, this is how we define this, when we analyze this being of us, we come to know of this being in the form of these 5 aggregates. And how does these 5 aggregates come about? How do they arise? They arise through the 6 bases. What are the 6 bases? The eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. It is through these 6 bases that thoughts arises, and when thoughts arises, the 5 aggregates. Now, we observe, we just contemplate on these 5 aggregates, what these 5 aggregates are, and what the 6 bases are. And then we go on to contemplate on the 4 noble truths. The truth of dukkha, the cause, the cessation or the end, and the path that leads to the cessation. And then another aspect of Dhamma is that of the 7 factors of enlightenment. These are the different aspects of Dhamma when we can consider and observe how the development have taken place in our minds. And that is how we cover the 4 foundations of mindfulness. These 4 foundations of mindfulness constitute the first factor of enlightenment, sati. Then, when sati arises, when you develop these foundations of mindfulness with regards to body, feelings, mind, and Dhamma, then the next factor is that of Dhamma Vichaya. Dhamma Vichaya, or investigation into Dhamma. And what aspects of Dhamma do you investigate? Here, you investigate the Dhamma with regards to that Dhammanupasana, the development with the mindfulness on Dhamma. So you continue from there. We talked about the 5 mental hindrances and observe these 5 mental hindrances, whether they are present or whether they are absent in the mind. Then the 5 aggregates. This time we observe, we investigate these 5 aggregates and see how these 5 aggregates arises through the 6 sense bases. And here, if it's good, if you can have this understanding how when a visual object reaches the eye base, the base of the eye base, the sensitive part of the eye base is what you call the retina, the eye. So when the visual object comes in contact with that eye base, the eye consciousness arises. With that eye consciousness, a thought arises. And within that thought, there, as soon as consciousness arises, there arise mental factors. And there are the 5 mental factors. What are these 5 mental factors? We talk about the factor of contact. When visual object comes into contact with the eye base and eye consciousness arises, then there is contact. There is passa or contact. Then where there is contact, feeling arises, vedana. Then sanya, perception, arises. Then there is volition, cetana, and manasikara or attention. These 5 mental factors condition. These 5 mental factors enables you to see a physical object. An object which a form which is of physical nature gets converted in the mind by way of a mental image. This conversion is done through these 5 mental factors. As soon as this mental factors arises, you see it in your mind, in your thoughts, as a mental image. Then conditions the 5 aggregates to arise. It gives rise to the idea. The 5 aggregates arise. These 5 aggregates are the creation of the mind. And that is why the Buddha have analyzed this being and how he compare these 5 aggregates. How did the Buddha compare the 5 aggregates? He gives the analogy of rupa or form. He compares form in the form of a foam, like soup bubbles, foam, like that. Compares feeling in the form of a bubble. When the rain falls to the drain, you find bubbles coming out. Just in that manner. There is no substance, there is no real value in that. He compares sanya, perception, as a mirage. Compares sankhara, volitionary activities, as a plantain tree or a banana trunk. The trunk of the stem of a banana tree, where you remove the sheath after sheath after sheath, you find there is no core, there is no pith in it, there is no substance in it. That is the nature of our thoughts. Then he talks about Vijnana, consciousness. The Buddha compares that to that of a magician or conjurer. Now, he does not place any value, any real value in these five aggregates. These five aggregates that have a reason through the six bases by way of these mental factors. You find it is a creation of the mind. It is just a delusion of the mind. So, because of ignorance, our inability to see the true nature of things, we take these aggregates as real and as something which has substance in, and we cling on to that. That's what you call clinging. And that's how we give rise to the five grasping aggregates. We cling on to this aggregate of form, of body. We cling on to the aggregate of feeling, the aggregate of perception, the aggregate of mental formation, of volitionary activities, and the aggregate of consciousness. And that is why beings arise. As a result of this clinging, then there is attachment, there is becoming, there is birth of a being. That is how we create these bodies. But in reality, when you develop your mind further, you will see, when you develop the mind and see the true nature of your being, you see nothing but bundles of energies as these five aggregates. Then, realizing this is how you develop and analyze these Dhamma, five aggregates and six bases, and see how they arise and fall, cease. The nature is such, when the thoughts arise, your five aggregates arise, and soon after that, the thought ceases, the five aggregates ceases. And that is how it is through these six bases, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, that this is how the Buddha defines the whole world when we talk about the world. There are different worlds we talk about. There is the external world, there is the internal world. How do you perceive the external world, the world outside? You perceive, you understand the external world through your eye, through your ear, your nose, your tongue, your body, and your mind. If you do not have these six bases, where is the world? That is why, from the Buddhist point of view, we do not talk about origin. When we say about origin of the world, the end of the world, where is the origin of the world? The origin, the middle, and the end of the world lies in this fathom of the body. The fathom long body, this 6 foot or 5 foot long body. The beginning of the world lies there, with your eyes, with your ears, with your nose, your tongue, your body, and your mind. The moment you see the realities of this existence, you see changing as impermanence. Then where is the real world outside us? So, Dhamma, investigation of Dhamma, we investigate five aggregates, investigate the six bases, through the six bases, and then you realize that all these are just in a state of anicca, change. As they are changing, constantly changing, they are not satisfactory. There is no satisfactoriness. It's unsatisfactoriness. And anything that is changing and unsatisfactoriness, there is no real substance, no real entity. And mind begins to investigate Dhamma in this manner, what you call Dhamma Vijaya, the second factor of enlightenment, then it conditions another factor of enlightenment to arise that we call Virya. Virya is the energy, mental energy. And this, you use this mental energy to direct, to overcome any unwholesomeness, any unwholesome thoughts in the mind, to overcome if there are any unwholesome thoughts, and if there is no unwholesome thoughts, you use the effort to prevent, to avoid unwholesomeness from arising in the mind. You use this mental energy to direct also to maintain the wholesome states which you have developed, and to further develop, cultivate them. And those wholesome states which you have not developed, you cause them to develop, you cultivate them. This is what you use this mental energy for. You direct them towards. But as you contemplate on these, when you develop mindfulness and contemplate on Dhamma, investigate Dhamma by way of the 5 aggregates and the 6 bases, you find that energy, you get more energy, rising up. And as this energy arises, you can dwell in it for some time, dwell in it for 5-10 minutes. And as that energy arises, mental energy arises, it conditions another factor of enlightenment to arise, that what we call piti. Piti is, for want of a better English word, we use the word rapture, or the kind of feeling of satisfaction. You have the feeling of enthusiasm, of going forward, going on to practice, and you feel good. But there is the sensation, it's slightly of a gross nature, which many of you who have developed the absorption, as you develop the first, second absorption, you begin to experience this piti, little by little. As you stay longer in that absorption, you find the piti becomes stronger, especially in the second absorption. By the third absorption, the piti begins to fade away and disappear. And this piti gives you a very good feeling. And it is this feeling that conditions you to go on further, strive on further. If you sit for a period of half an hour or 3/4 of an hour, if this piti does not arise, you will want to give up your practice. You will feel very dull, very bored. But when piti arises, you feel your body becomes more upright, and you feel like you want to pursue further. And even if somebody tells you to wake up, you feel like not wanting to wake up, you want to continue in your practice. That means you have this element of piti in you. Right? Then, as this piti arises, you have this pleasant sensation. And that conditions, that tranquilizes your body. Your body, mind becomes tranquil, becomes very serene and calm, and becomes very light, as if floating up. So you dwell in this factor of enlightenment for some time. Then, as you dwell this factor of enlightenment, you feel the lightness, and this lightness leads on for you to develop what you call samadhi. And in this factor of the 7 factors of enlightenment, we refer to the vipassana samadhi, the concentrated insight. Because this samadhi has a reason upon your investigation of Dhamma, and seeing anicca, dukkha, anatta, the characteristics of existence. That's how the energy, piti, pasati, and now samadhi arise. And this samadhi arises and reaches the peak and climaxes to upekkha, or equanimity, that balance, that full equilibrium. Now even that state of upekkha, the seventh factor of enlightenment, you find that upekkha is also not permanent. After a little while, when you observe how upekkha, you keep your mind in upekkha, where there is now no craving, no aversion, then total equilibrium, blissful state of equilibrium. Now when that upekkha matures, then your mind, you get into the void. And it is through this void, when you come out of this void, that you realize the bliss of Nibbana. Now these are the seven factors of enlightenment. And what you have been doing during this 1 week that has passed, you have been cultivating these factors of enlightenment little by little. We tell you to develop mindfulness in the body, mindfulness, foundations of mindfulness, and you cultivate this mindfulness in the body, mindfulness on feelings, and mindfulness on the mind, and the mindfulness on Dhamma. Then you also develop, when you develop your jhanas, when you develop your absorption, then you see the virya, you see the piti, you make use of effort, you arouse effort to arise in you. Then piti arises, and you experience a certain amount of passaddhi. And after you have developed these 4 jhanas, we take you down to the basic, to the normal functioning mind, to observe nama rupa, mind body, to see cause and effect, how cause and effect functions in all the activities of your body, and then to see the rising and falling of mental and physical phenomena. Now this leads you to develop the vipassana samadhi. So you see that these factors of enlightenment, you are practicing it one by one, and little by little you develop them, so that in the end, when you perform, when you contemplate on these 7 factors of enlightenment, develop them, when it comes to maturity, upon maturity, soon when you contemplate, it just matures, and all the factors of enlightenment matures, and this is how you experience them one by one, in very quick succession, and your mind very quickly gets into a state of equanimity, and then gets into the void, and you experience the bliss of Nibbana. So this is what we call the 7 factors of enlightenment. Now, with regards to practice of mindfulness, the Buddha has said how we should practice our mindfulness of the body, and with clear comprehension. What is this clear comprehension? Comprehending clearly that when you walk, in all the postures that you do, carry out activities, clearly comprehending that there is no being, there is no person doing the thing. That is what, when you do the nama rupa, mind and body, clearly comprehending only mind, body, And a cause and effect, cause and effect. That is why you have heard when in the past, previous nights' discourses, that when the question was asked to the Buddha, posed before the Buddha, whether one is responsible for suffering, does one cause oneself suffering? What did the Buddha say? Buddha says, do not say so. Whether another person causes suffering to oneself, Buddha says, don't say so, isn't it? Then the next question he asks is that suffering? Buddha says, yes. Do you realize what suffering is? Do you know what suffering is? Buddha says, yes. Then what is this suffering? How do you experience this suffering? Now, if you analyze this being and realize that this being, there is no person, no individual, no entity as such, then how does this suffering arise? It arises by way of that law of cause and effect. Cause and effect. And that is how, when you see an object through your eye, you see that object gets in contact with your eye, base, consciousness arises, thoughts arises. Who does this? Do you purposely do it? No. Is there any other person who does it for you? No. So what is it that does it? It is just this karma, cause and effect, a whole series of cause and effect. That is how suffering arises. It's when you cling on to that. Why suffering? Because these series of cause and effect that takes place, it does not last. It arises and ceases. Soon after it arises, it ceases. So there is nothing that we can grasp. But the ignorant mind, as long as there's ignorance, as long as the mind is in a nascent state, that mind clings on. You cling on to what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, what you touch and feel, and what you think. Cling on to these aggregates. That is how suffering arises. If there is no clinging, then is there suffering? There is suffering, but there is no sufferer. If you do not cling to it, still there is. Suffering exists, isn't it? There is suffering, but there is no sufferer. Now you sit, many of you by now have experience, you sit for half an hour, 45 minutes, and you feel very painful feeling. Right? As long as your mind is not concentrated, your mind cling on to this feeling. You think this feeling is yours. You cling on to it. As such, you feel very painful. And you express and you say, my leg is very painful. Right? But the moment you are able to gain into concentration, you forget about your feeling. That feeling is not yours anymore. But the feeling is there. As soon as you get out of your concentration, the feeling is there. Right? Suffering is there. But you have temporarily dissociated from it by way of getting into absorption, by way of getting into concentration. Right? So, but this is only temporary. When you develop the absorption, develop the concentration, you can get rid of suffering temporarily only. The moment you get out of your absorption, you feel numbness, you feel pain, and so on. But a more permanent cure to that pain is when you turn your mind from calmness to develop insight. That is what vipassana is about. The word vipassana means, the word pasana comes from pasati. Pasati is to see, to observe. The prefix vipassana, it implies to see things in a special manner, in a special way. In what special way? To see things in terms of the characteristics of anicca, change or impermanence, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, anatta, non-self. What is this self? When many people talk about soul and self, this idea of the soul in classical terms, you find during the time of the Buddha, there are different views, different opinions, different views about soul, belief in soul, the soul idea. The earliest concept of the soul can be found in the Rig Veda, one of the earliest Vedas in the Vedic Brahmanism, religion of the Vedic Brahmanism, today what you call Hinduism. In the Vedas, the Rig Veda, they explained the soul as the size of a thumb dwelling in the heart, through which there are channels, outlets. Now this concept of soul was there for some time, and then later thinkers did not agree with this concept. And you find in the Upanishads that Indian thinkers developed this concept of soul and says it is not so big as the size of the thumb. It's the size of a millet grain, a small millet grain, like a mustard seed, that size. But still, in the heart, you find that Indian thinkers and yogis, they all think there is the heart base. Later, when you develop your mind, you also experience. Now, they talk about the soul as being small in the heart. Then later on, still after some time, after thousands of years, other thinkers, Indian thinkers, philosophers, they disagree with this, and they say, no, the soul is not that size. It is small as the millet grain, but as large as the universe. Now what is that? What does that mean? We come close to the idea to say that there is no soul. See, it is the way for that idea, because it's difficult to reject certain idea that has been instilled in the minds of men so easily. So this is how actually this idea has developed in the minds of men, and various religions have developed these ideas. In certain religions, when they talk about the soul, they say that human beings have soul, but animals do not have soul, isn't it? There are some religions who say that. That is why it's okay to kill animals, but not humans. But there are certain religions that say the soul, sometimes inside, sometimes outside. Now, the views about soul, about self, there are altogether 6 during the time of the Buddha. In the Brahmajala Sutta, in the Digha Nikaya, in the long discourses in the Sutta Pitaka, there is a discourse on what you call Brahmajala Sutta, where the Buddha talked about the views existing in India during his time. There are 62 different views about the soul and the self. And the Buddha rejected all of them. Then, what did the Buddha do? What did the Buddha taught? Now, to remove this idea, classical idea of the soul, or the self, a permanent entity, sometimes is thought as inside the body, sometimes outside, sometimes inside, sometimes outside. There are still now certain religions, certain groups of people believing these things. Why? How is it that it got this idea of soul sometimes inside, sometimes outside? Because when you develop your mind, when you start developing your mind, some people may have the ability of projecting their mental body outside them. And so, when they begin to see their being outside in front of them, they think there is some entity. Otherwise, how can you create mental body? We explain this in terms of manomaya. That is the ability of the mind to create body. You see? So, and with this body, you can send your body here and there. Sometimes they talk about the astral body. They rise and fall. They appear and they disappear. Right? So, what you see? Just as this physical body appear for some time and then disappear. Your cells begin to die and finally disappear from here too. You see? So this is the nature of being. Nothing, when you analyze, that is why when the Buddha taught about these 5 aggregates of Panchakanda, also, they rise and fall. They appear and they disappear. Right? So, what you see? Just as this physical body appear for some time and then disappear. Your cells begin to die and finally disappear from here too. You see? So this is the nature of being. Nothing, when you analyze, that is why when the Buddha taught about these 5 aggregates of Panchakanda, Buddha analyzed his whole being into these 5 aggregates for one reason: to defeat the idea, to get rid of the idea of the self, the soul, atta. And it is something which you can yourself experience. When you develop your mind, develop those 7 factors of enlightenment more and more, then you will be able to experience, in the void, you experience anicca, dukkha, anatta, the non-self you experience. Where there is nothing, you experience. And the Buddha say, we all say that Nibbana is the highest bliss, isn't it? Nibbanam paramang sukham. So you all run, you all like to achieve that happiness, Nibbanam paramang sukham, because you get the very high bliss, ultimate bliss. You create in your mind wonderful bliss that you can experience. It's true, it's wonderful bliss. But remember, the Buddha also said that Nibbanam paramang sunyam. Sunya means, sunyata means void, empty. Nibbana is the highest emptiness. When you arrive at Nibbana, you realize it's empty. What is empty? Empty means you must empty of something. Emptied of what? You are emptied of greed, no more craving, no more hatred, no more delusion. So, go on developing this and you will realize the highest happiness is the real emptiness, where your mind is fully empty. You experience this kind of emptiness, degrees of this kind of emptiness, little by little, little by little. As you get into the fourth jhana, you experience a certain amount of emptiness in that. But when you further develop that, you will realize real emptiness of it. You see? So, this is how you develop and try to understand the Dhamma. This Dhamma I call the sublime Dhamma, Sat Dhamma. I mentioned before that there are two kinds of Dhamma. There is mundane, Lokya Dhamma, and there is Lokuttara Dhamma. Lokya Dhamma, the Dhamma with regards to the worldly matters. Now listen carefully and take note of all these Dhamma that you have been told over the last 1 week until now. Because in a few days' time, we will have to return you to the world and we have to talk on more mundane Dhamma. So, today we talk about the climax of and maybe tomorrow when the Venerable comes, we request him to talk about Nirvana. Then after that we come down to more mundane matters and tell you how you should, when you come out of this program, how you should function as good brothers and sisters, good sons and daughters, good husband and wives. So don't worry, all our devotees, all our brothers and sisters who are waiting there, and as you know, some of them are very frightened that you will attain Nibbana too soon. Don't be worried. Some people have the idea that those who attain Nibbana, they cannot stay at home. And some people have got this idea, have given this idea that those who have realized Nibbana, they cannot stay at home for more than 7 days. If they stay at home for no 7 days, they will die. Do you really believe in these things? No. These are hearsays, these things, right? You must try it yourself and see. Now, we talk about the Sangha. But the talk, when you recite those qualities of Sangha, you talk Sāvaka Sangha. What are the Sāvaka Sangha? A Sangha comprises of not only, many people think, the monks. When they talk about Sangha, they talk about monks. Or maybe sometimes they add in the nuns too. But when we recite those qualities of Sangha, we say Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangha. Sāvaka Sangha refers to not only monks and nuns, but it refers to the noble, the faithful, noble disciples of the Buddha. Who are those noble disciples of the Buddha? Those who have developed and is further defined. Yadidam Chattaru. What is that? There are the 4 pairs of person and 8 kinds of individuals. That is what the Sravaka are the four pairs of person. The four pairs of person. They are those four pairs of person. What are the four pairs of person? They are those who have entered the path, the stream winner, Sottapati or Sottapanna, right? Sakadagami, Anagami, Arhat. These are the four stages of sainthood, right? Now, in each stage of sainthood, you have one who has entered the path and one who realizes the path. So you have one pair. There is a person who strives in the path now. And some of you are in the path now. Until such time you realize the friction. When you realize the friction, you become a different person. Right? Another kind of person. Right? So there are, in each of these stage of sainthood, this four stage of sainthood, there is the path and the friction, Magga Phala. You tread in the path, you practice until you realize, then you come to the friction. Then you go a little one step further. That is why you get four pairs of person or 8 kinds of individual that constitute the Sravaka Sangha. And remember, there are still, when you get out of this place, you will find that many people have the view, have the belief that still some people hold the belief that in this world today there cannot be any arahants. But this is not what the Buddha taught. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta you find that the Buddha says to Chunda, as long as there are disciples, as long as there are disciples and followers to practice the Dhamma, this world will not be empty of arahats. This is what the Buddha said. So this path is there and has been maintained. This is something that we are very fortunate to live at a time to have this opportunity to practice this Dhamma amidst the various kinds of mixtures, various kinds of rites, rituals and ceremonies, right? Which many or most of you know Buddhism in the form of rituals, right? And forms of, prayer, coming for chanting and asking for blessing and all sorts of things. This is what Buddhism is to you. Until you come and realize that in Buddhism there is the teaching of how we can develop our mind step by step, stage by stage, how we can purify our mind and liberate this mind. Understand? This is what Buddhism is about. The teachings of the Buddha is it's nothing but a process, but one which helps us to purify our minds. And in the purification of our mind, we will begin to understand the true nature of ourselves. And we find that there is no self. Now you think you are somebody. After you realize, then you are nobody. When you realize that you are nobody, then you are really somebody. Then you will be a really ordinary person. Now you are extraordinary. You look around you, everybody behave extraordinarily. They are not ordinary human beings. They are a bit extraordinary. That's why you always try to look a little bit different from others. Your hairstyle, your clothing, you always try to be something different, not ordinary. But after you realize the true nature of life, you will be able to live as a truly ordinary human being, ordinary person. Right? So go on, strive on with diligence. This is what the Buddha said. Do not feel that, if you are not able to develop as quickly as others, no, do not be worried. Do not be too over-anxious over this. You may have certain skills which you have developed. Some people I know, some people you find little children, some people they walk, little children they walk very fast. They learn how to walk very quickly, very young age. Some cannot walk. I know of some people too who cannot walk. Some little children, they cannot walk until 1-2 years old. But when they learn how to walk, they run. So such development can also take place in you. Little by little, but determine. Make an effort. Your success will depend. The path to success. Buddha talked about certain qualities, certain factors of success. If you want to succeed in your attainments, not only in this attainment, in whatever you do, there are 4 conditions. What are they? 1, chanda. You must have the wish, you must have the aspiration in your mind. Then, virya. You must have the effort, the energy to pursue that wish, that aspiration. Then, chitta, one-mindedness. Your mind must not be distracted over here and there, other things. You are one-mindedness. And then, vimamsa. Vimamsa is the ability to discern things, the ability to scrutinize, the ability to contemplate. If you only have the ability to get into calmness and deep concentration, but if you have no ability to concentrate, to contemplate, to reflect on, then there is no wisdom. You develop this vimamsa or wisdom, scrutinize things. These are the 4 factors. Itipada, I call. Develop the power of your mind, mental powers, success, way to success. You must have an aim, must have a goal in your mind. If you do not have this aim, then you don't reach the goal. So, have this aim in your mind that if you make the determination that may I be able to tread this path and realize that final goal, be free my mind from suffering, liberate my mind, then if you have this aim in your mind, you have set your mind in that course, in that direction, and everything else, all your energies will move in that direction. Right? So, now I will conclude this session, Dhamma session, by way of reciting and sharing them, reciting suttas and share these merits with all the devas, all deities, and then also think of all your departed relatives and friends that you can transfer or dedicate these merits of this occasion, and what you have done throughout the day. All those who have been practicing, novices all our devotees who have worked very hard from morning to prepare, to serve breakfast, lunch and drinks, and rejoice in these meritorious actions and share these merits, dedicate these merits for the well-being and happiness of all beings. Now, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijjacharana sampanno sugato lokavido anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati satta deva manusanang buddho bhagavati swakato bhagavata dhammo sandittiko akaliko ehi passiko opanayiko paccattam veditabbo vinyuhiti supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho nyayapatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho samicipatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho yadidang cattari purisa yugani atta purisa puggala esa bhagavato savaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakkineyo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punya ketang lokasati vandami cetiyam sabbang sabbatane supatititang saririka dhatu mahabodhing buddha rupang sakalang sada vandami cetiyam sabbang sabbatane supatititang saririka dhatu mahabodhing buddha rupang sakalang sada vandami cetiyang sabbang sabbatane supatititang saririka dhatu mahabodhi lokanatena pujita yassa mule nisinno vasabbari vijayang aka patto sabbanyutang satta vanditang bodhipadapang imete mahabodhi lokanatena pujita ahampi te namasami bodhi raja namatute yassa mule nisinno vasabbari vijayang aka patto sabbanyutang satta vanditang bodhipadapang ime ete mahabodhi lokanatena pujita ahampi te namasami bodhi raja namatute yassa mule nisinno vasabbari vijayang aka patto sabbanyutang satta vanditang อิตินามัสสามิโบธิราชานามัตตุเตกรณียมัตตกุสเลนะยังตังสันตังปดังอภิสัมมิจสักโฆอุจุจสุจุจสุวัจโจจัสสะโมโดนะติมานิสันโตสโกจะสุบโรจะอัปปกิจโจจะสัลลอุกวุติสันตินริโอจะนิปโกจะอัปปกัปโบกุเลสุอนันุกิโตนะจะกุตังสัมมาจริกินชีเยนะวิญโยปริอุปวดิยุงสุขิโนวาเคมิโนหนตุสัพเพสัตตาภวันตุสุขิตาตาเยเกจิปานบูตติตัสสาวาตาวราวาอนวสิสานิกาวาเยมหันตาวามัจจิมารัสสกานุกตุลาตาวาเยวะอดิตาเยจดุเรวสันติอมิดุเรภูตาวาสัมภเวสีวาสัพเพสัตตาภวันตุสุขิตาตานะปโรปรังนิโกเบตนาติมานิตกัตตจินังคันจิญาโรสนาปฏิกสัญญานัญญมัญญัสสะดุกขมิจเจยมาตายตานิยังพุตตังอายุสาเอกพุตตมนุรักเกเอวัมปิสัพพพุเตสุมาณสังภาเวอปริมาณังเมตังชะสัพพโลกัสมิงมาณสังภาเวอปริมาณังอุตตังอโดจติริยัญชะอสัมบาดังอเวรังอสปัตตังติตังจารังนิสินโนวาสยานโนวายาวตัสสะวิกตมิโตเอตังสติงอดิเตยบรามเมตังวิหารังอิดมาหุดิตตินชะอนุปกัมมสีลวาดัสสเนนะสัมปันโนคามิสุวินัยเกดังนะหิจาตุกัปปะสียังปุณริติติเอเตนะสัจจวาเจนะโสติเตโหตุสัพพดาเอเตนะสัจจวาเจนะสัพพโรโกวินาศตุเอเตนะสัจจวาเจนะโหตุเตจายมังกลังสัพพิติโยวิวัจจันตุสัพพโรโกวินาศตุมาเตภวัตวันตรายโยสุขีดีกายุโกภวะภวตุสัพพมังคลังรักขันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพพุทธานุภาเวนะสัตตาโสติภวันตุเตภวตุสัพพมังคลังรักขันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพธัมมานุภาเวนะสัตตาโสติภวันตุเตภวตุสัพพมังคลังรักขันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพสังฆานุภาเวนะสัตตาโสติภวันตุเตนักขัตตยักขบูตานังปาปะกานิวารณะปริตาสานุภาเวนะหันตวาเตสังอุปาทเวนักขัตตยักขบูตานังปาปะกานิวารณะปริ Paritassanubhavena hantu adesang upadave Nakhatta yakka bhutanam papagga nivarana Paritassanubhavena hantu adesang upadave Akasatta ca bummata devanaga mahidika Punyantang anumoditva cirang rakkantu loka sasanang Akasatta ca bummata devanaga mahidika Punyantang anumoditva cirang rakkantu desanang Akasatta ca bummata devanaga mahidika Punyantang anumoditva cirang rakkantu mang paranti Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo Abhivadana silasa nityam vaddha pachayino Cattaro dhamma vaddanti ayuvanno sukhang balang Ayurarogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevacha Ato nibbana sampatti minate samicchato By the power of the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha and all the merits that you have acquired during on this occasion, you can make your firm determination and aspiration, first sharing these merits with all the devas, all celestial beings, wherever they may be, and also dedicate the merits to all your departed relatives and friends, wherever they may be, that they may receive Dhamma, they grow in Dhamma, and pave the way for them to be free from all sufferings. And to all these good thoughts, all the merits that you have acquired, make your firm determination, aspiration in your mind, that you'll be able to further develop, to strengthen and purify your minds, so that you'll be able to confront and overcome whatever obstacles, whatever difficulties that arise, and that you'll be able to develop wisdom, compassion, be able to make good use of your lives, not only for your own happiness, but also for the welfare, for the happiness of the many. And may you all be able to progress in your life, progress in your practice, and realize